In this tutorial, you're going to learn how to return HTML content from your view functions. So here on the top, you can see we're importing this render function. We use this function to render a template. So in our index view, let's delete line 8. We don't want to format the result as a string. So we have the list of movies. Now, instead of returning an HTTP response, we want to call the render function. The first parameter here is the request. So we pass this request object that we get here. The second parameter is the name of our template. We haven't created this yet, but for now, let's just pass index.html. And the third parameter, which is optional because it has a default value of none, is the context object, which is basically a dictionary that we use to pass data to our template. So in this case, we want to pass the list of movies to render as HTML. So here we pass a dictionary. In this dictionary, we add a key called movies. And we set this to our movies object. Now, finally, we need to return the result of the render function. Save the changes. OK. The next step is to create our template. So here in the Movies app, let's add a new folder. By convention, we should call that templates because that's the name that Django looks for. OK. In this folder, let's add a new file. Index.html. For now, let's just render something really basic to make sure all the plumbing is working. So let's add an h1 hello world. Okay, save the changes. Now back in the browser, let's refresh this page. Okay, all the plumbing is working. So now let's render the list of movies in this HTML template. Now back in VS Code, look at the language that is currently selected to edit this document. By default, this is set to Django HTML, which brings a bunch of snippets for quickly generating some Django code. You're going to see this in a minute, but let's temporarily change this to HTML. So click this and type HTML. Now here I want to show you a powerful feature that is not available when using Django HTML as the language to edit this file. And that feature is called Zen coding. With that, we can quickly generate some HTML markup. See what I'm going to do. Let's say we want a table with the class table. Inside this table, we want to have a t-head section. And inside the t-head section, we want a tr. Inside this tag, we want to have 3 th tags. So th times 3. Press the tab. There you go. This is what we call Zen coding. So the first column is the title of the movie. The second is genre. Then we have stock. Let's add one more column and call it daily rate. So this is our table heading. Now let's create our table body. So one more time, tbody. Inside this tag, we want to have a tr with 4 td tags. So td times 4 tab. There you go. Now, we want to render this tr dynamically. So basically, we want to iterate over all the movies that we get in this template. And for each movie, we want to render a table row. That's where we use Django template syntax. So in Django templates, we can execute some logic using template tags like this. So we open a curly brace, add a %, and also close it with a %. Now, in between these braces, we can write some logic, like an if statement or a loop. So here we want to use a for loop for movie in movies. Now, earlier we used a context object to pass a dictionary to this template. And in that dictionary, we had a key called movies. That is why we can access this object here. Now, writing logic using template tags can be a little bit tedious. So that's where we switch the language from HTML to Django HTML, which brings a bunch of snippets for automatically generating some code. So let's delete this line and type for. Look at these items here. Anytime you see an item with this square icon, that represents a code snippet. So here I can press enter. And this automatically generates a code snippet for a for loop. So here we can type for movie, press tab. Now we are in the second placeholder, movies. Now press tab. Now we are in the third placeholder. And this is where we want to render our table row. So I'm going to select this tr and move it right here. Now let's also indent it. There you go. So this is what we call a template tag, and we use it to execute some logic. Now, here in our tr, we want to render some content inside each TD tag. So we use another syntax with double curly braces to render the value of a variable. So in this case, we want to render movie.title. Similarly, we want to render movie.genre. Next is stock. So movie.number in stock. Unfortunately, we don't have IntelliSense here, so that's something that you'll have to live with. And finally, we want to render movie.daily_rate. So essentially in Django templates, we have two special notations. One is double curly braces for rendering a value, and one is curly brace followed by a percent to execute some logic. We use that to execute loops as well as conditional statements. And finally, you can see that our for loop is terminated with an end4 template tag. So save the changes back in the browser, refresh the page, and here's our imaginary table of movies. Currently, it has no styles, but if you inspect any of these elements, you can see that here we have an HTML table. Now, back in this template on the top, let's remove this heading. We don't really need this. Save the changes. And one last thing before we finish this lecture. Let's open up the views module. Look at this red underline. Pylint is complaining that the movie class has no objects member. Basically, the reason this is happening is that Pylint is not familiar with Django objects. But this is pretty easy to fix. We need to install a package called Pylint Django. So let's open up a new terminal window and run pipenv install Pylint-Django. Okay, the package is installed. Now the next step is to create a file in the root of our project. So let's collapse this folder. Here in the root, let's add a new file. We're going to call that .pylintrc. So this file has no name. It only has an extension, pylintrc. This is the configuration file for Pylint. Here we need to tell Pylint to load this plugin that we just installed, Pylint-Django. So we said load-plugins to Pylint-Django. Save the changes. Now back in the views, you can see the compilation error is gone. And one more thing before we finish this lecture. Here we passed index.html as the name of our template. While this works, there is a problem with this approach that you may face in a real enterprise application. Let me show you. So temporarily, I'm going to change this to index2. Obviously, we don't have this file on disk, so we're going to get an error. Back to the browser, let's refresh this page. We got this error, template does not exist. Now, if you scroll down, here we can see the paths that Django searches for to find this template. So here we have three paths. The first one is for the admin app. So admin/templates/index2.html. The second one is for the auth app. So here's the auth app. It looks in the auth app/templates/index2.html. Now the source code for these two apps is not part of our project, but they actually exist in our virtual environment. So here's the path to our virtual environment. Somewhere here we have this directory, site packages/Django/contrib/auth, and so on. Now the third path here is for our movies app. So vidly/movies/templates/index2. Why does this matter? Well, in a real project, we're going to have multiple apps. As you can see, when we try to render a template, Django looks at the templates folder of all the installed apps in the order. So here in our settings module, you have seen the list of installed apps before. So we have admin, auth, and so on. So when Django tries to find a template, it starts here on the top. It looks at each app. If that app has a templates folder, it will search the templates folder of that app to find the given template. And that means if we use a general name like index.html, it is possible that Django loads the index.html of another app that is installed first, not the app that we are currently working with. So as a best practice, we should give a namespace to these templates. Here's how we do it. In our templates folder, we add another folder, movies. That is our namespace. Now we move index.html inside this folder, move, and then in our code, we always prefix our template name with movies/. Well, that depends on the app we're currently working with. So all the templates for the Movies app should be prefixed with movies/. Now save the changes, back in the browser, refresh the page, problem is solved. So this is our table, but that looks pretty boring. In the next lecture, I'm going to show you how to install Bootstrap and give this page a nice and modern look and feel.